This podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Bogosity. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. That's audibletrial.com/Bogosity. Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the 25th of July, 2016, the podcast to end all podcasts. This is your host, Shane Killian, and joining me this week, you may have seen him on the forum as Ibrahim 90 and on YouTube as Al-Bugshi. Please welcome to the podcast, Ibrahim Zallum.
Hello.
Ibrahim, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
A bit of a complicated personality, actually.
We like those.
Yes. Yeah, I'm pretty much a mutt. My dad is Palestinian and my mom's an American from Ohio, which might explain the disturbing lack of an Arabic accent, and yet the presence of an Arabic name. Right now I'm a college student, specifically a graduate student at Utah State University, and I just have a hobby in politics, I suppose, especially Near Eastern politics, because that's where I'm from. So yeah, that's basically the long and short of it.
Well, let's deconsecrate the news of the bogus. So I think the first thing we should cover is the attack last week in Nice, France, where a cargo truck driver killed 84 people and injured 303.
Terrible tragedy.
Yeah, and he killed them. I mean, there were even children that he killed and everything. He just drove his cargo truck right through the Bastille Day crowd and was stopped when he was shot by French police officers and killed.
Yep.
And apparently he was armed and fired back at them, but there's no report of him hitting anyone with the firearm, just with the truck, at least that I could find. Now, the great thing about having Ibrahim on the podcast is he can help me pronounce names like this, the perpetrator's name.
Sure. Mohamed Zahwej Bouhilal.
So he is a Frenchman who was born in Tunisia, but apparently this attack didn't have anything to do with Islam, at least as far as anyone's been able to determine for sure so far. So we said last week we wanted to wait until we had more details before commenting, and I don't really have a whole lot of political comments to make about this. I just want to talk about the facts that we know and what we can probably conclude from them thus far.
From what his family was saying, he had a history of mental instability and also that he was not very religious, tended to drink and pork and all that stuff. They also noted that he started sending them money not long before the attack happened. So,
oh, I missed that part.
Yeah. I don't know if that has anything to do with his motive or not, his mental instability or...
But I know over the years he was on and off his meds and had problems with drug abuse and things like that.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. He may have had a religious conversion or, some sort of quote-unquote awakening, but again, there's no real evidence for it so far. And actually this morning, not long before I came to the podcast, there was news that he may have had an accomplice.
There's speculation on that, but...
Yeah. So nothing's really certain about this right now. All we know is that this guy, for some reason, decided he was going to go into the truck and plow a whole bunch of people under it.
But that didn't stop people from speculating. The Paris news agency AFP wasted no time in calling it the third major Islamist terrorist attack in France since the beginning of 2015. A French prosecutor said it was a planned attack and part of a grand conspiracy, and lots of people, of course, wasted no time in blaming Middle Eastern refugees, but... like you said, what we have so far, there's really not a lot to support any of that. It just seems to be one guy who's gone off the rails.
I find it interesting that they're blaming this on the refugees because this guy was a French citizen.
Yeah, he was born in Tunisia, but he wasn't a refugee.
Yeah, and he had been living in France, from what I understand, for several years prior to...
for most of his life, I think.
Yeah. So, you can't really blame it on the refugees if the refugees have only just come in 2015 or 2016, and this guy has been there since... the early 2000s at the very least. I think part of it is that ISIS itself is pretty much celebrating the event.
Yeah, but I think they've stopped short of claiming credit for it.
That is true. They haven't claimed credit for the attack. They just pretty much endorsed it, for lack of a better term. For example, their news channels, such as they are, release videos of the Eiffel Tower in flames saying we'll be back and all that stuff.
Which, by the way, was an accident. That was a truck carrying fireworks for the Bastille Day celebrations that had crashed and it had caught on fire. And
yes.
That wasn't anything to do with any kind of attack or anything.
One wonders how many of the attacks they claim as their own are actually attacks from ISIS, or if it's just them taking an opportunity to spread terror and confusion among the people by at least insinuating that they may have been responsible, even though they don't actually claim responsibility in this case.
Yeah, it's probably good for recruitment if they can say, hey, look at what we did, and they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So apparently there were 6 other people who were being questioned over the attack, and that includes a 38-year-old Albanian man who was arrested on suspicion of giving Bilal the gun he used to shoot back at the police. And apparently they also arrested Bilal's wife, but she was released when they determined she had nothing to do with it.
They're going to try to find out who may or may not have had anything to do with it, which I think is good, because you want to rule out all the crazy and outlandish ideas first.
Now there's a preliminary investigation by French officials which says that he's not tied to any international terror groups. He wasn't known by French or Tunisian authorities to have any ties to any suspected terrorists or terror activities in France or Tunisia. There is some evidence that he may have watched some of the ISIS beheading videos in the week before his attack, but according to his family, over the years he would often view violent content when he was off his meds. Now, there is some speculation that he was very quickly radicalized in the last few weeks of his life and did this at the behest of ISIS, but for the time being, that's still speculative. We certainly can't rule it out, but neither do we have any reason to conclude it.
Exactly. We simply don't know yet.
Yeah, so we'll just have to wait to see what further evidence brings.
Until then, my condolences to all the families affected by this tragedy, and hopefully we won't be seeing any more of these attacks.
Say, if you're tired of the promos in this podcast, well, the patrons got it early and with no ads or promos. Just go to patreon.bogosity.tv and donate at any level.
Hey everybody, this is Dave of the Superplex Bros, and you're listening to the Bogosity Podcast. When you're done, why don't you head over to superplexbros.com. We have all kinds of editorials and reviews on video games and pro wrestling. We're also currently hosting a major project called the Superplex Pokemon League, and we're about to go into our 3rd season. We just had our actual draft, and we're going over all of the teams and their draft picks. So why don't you head on over there, check things out, and if you like, you can even check out the Superplex Brothers podcast, where Matt and I basically bullshit about video games, pro wrestling, or whatever the hell we want. Anyway, until next time, take care.
So, Ibrahim, you're going to tell us about a failed military coup in Turkey?
Yes, the failed coup d'etat that happened last week. That one's actually quite an interesting case, because, at least to me, it's fascinating. It's not so much the coup itself that's fascinating as it is the insights into human psychology that the coup and people's reaction to it afforded. So, as most people know, elements of the Turkish army last week attempted a coup by attacking several government facilities and military bases. Notably, they bombed the parliament and attempted to raid the hotel that Erdogan was staying in at the time. And almost 300 people were killed as a direct result of that, including about 60 to 70 of the coup plotters. They were claiming to be doing this in order to restore democracy to genuine democracy to Turkey, and they told the civilians to go home and everything, stay at home. And Erdogan decided that he wasn't going to have any of that, and he went on TV and basically told the people to take to the streets, and the coup fell apart within a few hours of the beginning. And already we're seeing signs of a backlash against it. The Turkish government is attributing this to the Gulenist and Kemalist tides in Turkey, and they've already begun to, aside from arresting the people who were directly involved in the coup, the Erdogan government has suspended several thousand judges from their posts and arrested them as well. As of this week, the total number of arrests reached 9,300. Erdogan is swearing revenge on the plotters of the coup. And they're also requesting the extradition of Fethullah Gulen, who's the founder of the Gulenist movement. And they want to put him on investigate him and perhaps put him on trial to see what happens, to see if he's had anything to do with the coup, which he denies any involvement in, by the way.
Yeah, and looking at this, I mean, generally when you say military coup and the military is trying to take over the government, I think, well, gee, that can't be good. But looking at this, I'm kind of not quite sure whose side to be on because, and you're going to have to pronounce the name of the Turkish president for me.
Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Erdogan. And he is part of the Justice and Development Party, AKP.
Some people say it's roughly equivalent to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt.
That's what this Observer article I'm linking to is making it out to be. And apparently the military is one of the things that's just been stopping this from just being a complete Shia or Sharia, I'm not sure which, Muslim takeover.
Some people are saying that the military is pretty much, such as the Observer article, they're pretty much saying that the AKP is essentially planning on implementing Sharia law, or at the very least to turn back some of the secular reforms by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. He's the man who founded the modern Republic of Turkey. And a little bit of background on this. So we have the AKP, who are considered essentially analogs to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And they took power with Erdogan as president back in about 2000, if I recall correctly. And his opposition is composed of several different parties. The two most notable groups, so to speak, in Turkey itself are, and the ones that are being mentioned in the news a lot as a result of this coup, are the Kemalists and, more importantly, the Gülenists. Now, the Kemalists, they're named after Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and he's the guy who founded the modern Republic of Turkey, and these people are pretty much full-blown secularists. They don't cite their religious beliefs in any way in their policies. They believe in a complete separation of church and state, and so on. And then you have another faction. They're called the Gülenists. They're named after the aforementioned Fethullah Gülen, who's currently self-exiled in the United States. And these people are basically have a very liberal interpretation of Islam, and also, to an extent, they're also quite secularist as well. Both the Kemalists and the Gülenists, particularly the Gülenists, are firm believers in the democratic process. At least they should be. And right now, the finger of suspicion and all the accusations of the Turkish government are falling on the Gülenists as a direct result of the coup attempt, which is interesting because Fethullah Gülen himself denied and roundly condemned the coup attempt. But nonetheless, the Turkish government is wanting to push for his extradition. And this actually brings up an important point, that however and why the coup came to pass is practically irrelevant at this point, because what really matters now are the consequences.
Yeah, and it really looks like that Erdogan had his list of enemies ready to go just in case something like this happened.
Exactly.
And that's even some weird speculation, because Turkey's military is like the second biggest in NATO after the U.S., so why was this coup attempt just such like this meager little pathetic attempt?
Actually, there may be a simple reason to that. I've heard of we'll get to that later, I've heard of some pretty interesting ideas about why the coup took place. But the most important, one of the articles that I'm going to be linking to, and I'll be sending it your way, suggests that the reason the coup was so poorly executed, if not necessarily poorly planned. I mean, remember, they did target government buildings, the Turkish-run media, and they even tried to take Erdogan at his hotel. And the reason the coup was so hastily done and poorly executed was that they may have been planning it for a while, but then news came to them that Erdogan was planning on arresting several key members of the Gülenist and Kemalist factions within the army. And this may have caused them to hurry up and make haste, and that may have been the ultimate reason why the coup failed. Then there's also the fact that they told the civilians to go home, and Erdogan basically told the civilians in turn to support him. And the fact that even the opposition turned against the coup, roundly condemning it as a breach of democratic process. Now, the interesting thing about the Erdogan attempt to arrest these these Gulenists prior to the coup attempts is that this wasn't his first time. A year or two ago, there was also a corruption scandal and a series of trials, high-profile trials involving key military personnel, some of whom later took part in this coup. And it highlights, and I'll be linking the source to that below, and it highlights the fact that there's been a power struggle going on, as mentioned, as implied, between the army and the AKP party, which is led by Erdogan. So, ultimately, that might be the reason. But the point is that the fact that they may have gotten this last-minute news that Erdogan was planning on making these arrests and trials, that might have been the reason why they were rushed and why the coup failed.
And there's also this idea back in the Observer article that I guess, it sounds kind of like an Alex Jones false flag type of thing, that it was really staged by Erdogan.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like, okay, that's a kooky conspiracy theory, but from what this article's saying, stuff like that actually isn't that far out of the norm for Turkey.
It's not. And it may turn out to be the case that this might be a false flag operation. However, I find that first, at least near as I can tell, I find that unlikely, as there's currently not enough evidence to support it. However, this doesn't stop supposedly respectable news media outlets from reporting on this. And actually, that's the main reason why I wanted to join the podcast, and that is to discuss the reaction of the news media, especially in the Near East, to what happened in Turkey. Now, when the coup took place, and I'm going to cite the example of the Egyptian news outlets, they basically reported this as a coup, and they were celebrating a successful coup, and they started celebrating and comparing the Turkish military to the Egyptian military, saving Turkey's democracy from the AKP, who are, again, remember, who are Muslim Brotherhood equivalents. And, basically speculating on what happened to Erdogan because nobody heard from him for the first hour or two. And some were saying he fled to Germany, others said he fled to America, then he fled to Russia, and then all that stuff. Well, a couple of hours later, Erdogan comes on TV, he rallies the Turkish people to preserve his government, or protect his government, basically. And they rally in his support, and the coup fails within hours, several hundred arrests, 300 deaths later. And the Egyptians, guess what they do? Do they admit that they were wrong and apologize for it? Well, only one of the news media outlets did. Almost all the others basically said that, basically did a 180 and said that it was a good thing that Erdogan actually kept in power and that government returned to stability. So that tells you the level of integrity that the Egyptian news media has. And the reason they were propping this coup initially was, as I said, they were celebrating the fall of this Muslim Brotherhood analog, and they were comparing the Turkish military, which supposedly led the coup, even though there were elements of it, with the Egyptian army, which also led, in this case, successfully led the coup. And then once all this died down, once all the brouhaha over this coup died down, and then they backtracked and started doing a 180 on what they thought of the coup, they started speculating on why it failed. And a lot of them started suggesting, like you've mentioned in the Observer article, that this was a false flag operation, that Erdogan cited, that Erdogan came up with this coup in order to shore up his popularity and consolidate his power. And in the process, they compare it to the Reichstag fire, which happened in Nazi Germany. Now, the reasons that they come up with, that they cite for why this attack supposedly happened, are interesting in and of themselves, and they show you the level of logic involved with these people. For example, and I'm citing the Joe Show, which I have a link to with me right now, and I'll send it to you. They cite the fact that the Turkish military, the elements of the Turkish military that were involved, were quote-unquote humane and basically let the protesters swarm them and arrest them, even though most of the 300 who died in this coup were civilians. The other reason that they cited was the fact that the opposition, that the military didn't fire on the civilians in any way, which is mostly true, but again, bear in mind all the civilians died. and that they supposedly had their coup backwards, that they didn't attempt to take the president, which is also not true because they did, from what I gather, there was an attack on the hotel that Erdogan was staying in at the time the coup was taking place. Bear in mind that Erdogan was on vacation when this happened. The attack, by the way, took place after Erdogan had already left the hotel, so that's another reason why the coup attempt did not succeed. So basically, the point I'm getting at was that the news media has treated this pretty much in what can only be described as an example of yellow journalism. So they report a coup has succeeded where it's not. They then backtracked and said that they were always against the coup from the beginning, and now they're basically trying to justify why the coup failed, and coming up with these conspiracy theories, which they're now proffering up to the mass of people in the Arab world, especially in Egypt. And I think this highlights an example of problems we have not just in America, but also in the Arab world with news media. They're basically failing the people, whether it's the state-run media or pretty universal among all the channels there.
Hackers, terrorists, the NSA. But I repeat myself. Your online security is under attack, and the weakest point is your password. That's why you need LastPass. LastPass plugs into your browser and allows you to randomly generate strong, unique passwords anywhere on the web, all protected by one master password. LastPass sets up in minutes and gives you secure automatic logins throughout the web, synchronizing across all your browsers and all your computers, at home, at work, or on the road. It even securely stores sensitive form data, including credit card numbers, backup sensitive documents, membership info, Wi-Fi logins, and more. And with LastPass Premium, you can get these benefits on other applications and even mobile devices, and also get priority customer support. Sign up at password.bogosity.tv for a free month of LastPass Premium. Log in securely everywhere using the last password you'll ever have to remember. Go to password.bogosity.tv and get LastPass now. Okay, some good news back home, and this is very refreshing given the number of revelations of mass surveillance we've covered in the wake of the Snowden leaks. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals in New York has ruled that the U.S. government cannot force tech companies to give to the FBI or other federal authorities access to the data of non-U.S. customers stored in other countries. And so the controversy was over the Stored Communications Act. Microsoft was issued a warrant under the SCA by the Justice Department in 2014, and they were demanding the emails of a Microsoft customer who was suspected in an international drug trafficking case. Microsoft gave them all of the data that was stored inside the U.S., but the DOJ asked them to hand over data the company had maintained on servers in Ireland. The whole idea is with things like that, it should be the U.S. government going to the Irish government and saying, okay, you guys need to get a warrant and have Microsoft turn it over to you. The DOJ was trying to go straight to Microsoft and saying that they have to, quote, deliver records, physical objects, and other materials, and the only requirement, they said, that it was hosted by a U.S.-based company, regardless of where the data was actually located.
So international sovereignty is not a concept in the DOJ.
Yeah, but fortunately, all of the circuit judges sided with Microsoft, saying that Congress clearly didn't intend the warrant provisions to apply outside the United States. Quote, we conclude that Congress didn't intend the SCA's warrant provisions to apply extraterritorially. The SCA warrant in this case may not lawfully be used to compel Microsoft to produce to the government the contents of a customer's email account stored exclusively in Ireland.
There's only one problem with it, though. And it's really a interpretational problem rather than a matter of principle, which I agree with them entirely on. When they say that Congress did not intend this to be international, they're assuming that Congress actually reads the bill and has an interest in keeping things limited, knowing...
Well, that's true.
So,
But I think their thinking was that in order to pass a law like that, they would have to go against existing international treaties, and clearly they weren't wanting to do that.
Sometimes I wonder. I mean, this is the same country that when told that it has to pay reparations to El Salvador over a civil war, basically told the international court full speed, which is Arabic for, I don't give a shit. Well, frankly, this is good news. This is another protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. And also, first off, Microsoft was on the good side.
For once.
Second off, this was a federal circuit that ruled in favor of Microsoft. And third, that this happened in New York.
So Microsoft's general counsel, Brad Smith, said, quote, "As a global company, we have long recognized that if people around the world are to trust the technology they use, they need to have confidence that their personal information will be protected by the laws of their own country. Today's decision means it is even more important for Congress and the executive branch to come together to modernize the law."
I agree 100% with that. Something tells me that the Department of Justice isn't going to be very happy about this, and they're going to be spouting hot air about how can we maintain surveillance over drug traffickers and terrorists and stuff.
Yeah, and we'll have to see if it bleeds over into the election year rhetoric, too.
No prizes for guessing what both parties are going to say.
Want to get $5 really quick? Just fire up your mobile device and go to Get5, that's GET numeral 5.bogosity.tv. By using this link to sign in to the Amazon app for the first time, or if it's been more than 12 months, you'll get $5 off your order of $10 or more. So what are you waiting for? Go to get5.bogosity.tv. Now you can make Amazon purchases with Bitcoin by going to purse.bogosity.tv. Save an average of 20% just by buying from Purse, or get even greater discounts by linking your Amazon wish list. Go to purse.bogosity.tv. Bogosity.tv is a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program. Just clear your cookies and go to amazon.bogosity.tv. Or check the right-hand side of the podcast page for Amazon's best deals. So next time you buy online, go to amazon.bogosity.tv. And now it's time to drain the batteries of this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And this week it goes to the environmental movement as a whole, maybe not all the people in it, but generally they tend to be very selective about the damage to wildlife that they complain about.
Oh yeah.
So they'll complain about it when it's related to fossil fuels, but as we've talked about before, they'll gloss over or ignore entirely the problems caused by so-called green energy, like the incredible number of birds killed every year by wind turbines, when they've complained about far lower losses due to other factors.
And the fact that the greenest form of energy I can think of, they pretty much despise.
That's nuclear.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been dealing with some anti-nuclear woos on YouTube this week. It's not fun. So anyway, this article in the Sydney Morning Herald talks about the damage done to birds, specifically flamingos, that's actually caused by increased lithium demand for green battery technology like Tesla cars. And so what the Herald says is, quote, "If you plan to buy one," that is a Tesla car, "and help save the planet, people who live near the Atacama Salt Flat in Chile ask that you spare a thought for the flamingos. The 3,000 square kilometer Salar de Atacama is also known for wild flamingos who feed and breed in its lagoons. Some locals say miners sucking water out of the earth to get to the lithium are starving the long-legged birds in the process."
Frankly, I'm not really sure how the environmentalists like to gloss over the fact that draining the lithium from this particular swamp is killing birds, and that they'll crow over a relatively safe source of energy like nuclear, or like they did in Colorado, bitch about a stream being polluted that was upriver from a factory.
Or be completely silent when the EPA completely pollutes a river.
It's also pretty fascinating because many of these so-called green sources of energy, they not only involve, for example, wind turbines killing birds in this case, or that solar involves some pretty toxic and nasty chemicals, but also people forget that in order to get these minerals or metals that are used for these sources of energy, you have to do things, for example, like strip mining, which can be very destructive. Anyone who's seen a strip mine, and I have in Colorado, will know that it's basically just this giant disfiguring hole in the ground, and because they're getting directly at the ore, you're basically exposing this really toxic and nasty set of minerals to the surface. So trees don't really readily grow back on these strip mines. It takes a very long time. And worse yet, if this happens to be near a source of water, components inside the soil from the strip mine will leach into the water and mess up the pH of the stream, and also introduce just toxic stuff in general into the stream, and that will cause further environmental damage. In fact, when I was on field camp, when I was a CSU student, one of the places we went to was a stream that happened to be near one of these mines, and pH over there was very low. And we found out that the place was actually being monitored by the government, and further mining there is forbidden because of the toxic effects of these kind of mining processes. Now, in that case, they weren't mining stuff for green energy, but the principle remains the same. In order to extract these resources, you're going to end up doing a lot of damage, just as much as most other sources of energy, unfortunately.
So, according to biochemist Rolando Coca, quote, "They are pumping up an absurd amount of water. If they keep using the same methods to extract water, the consequences will be disastrous. All forms of life will be destroyed." And satellite images have confirmed that these lagoons and meadows in the salt flats are shrinking or drying up, and the Chilean Forestry Commission has recorded a drop in the flamingo population. Now, that might partially be due to a drought, but they don't think the drought explains all of it. Coca says, quote, "The salt flats are like a complex pipe system. If you take water from one side, it will affect the other. 15 years ago, I used to swim surrounded by flamingos in the Sahar Lagoon, and today you are lucky if you see one there."
Damn, that's quite a reduction in the flamingo number.
Yeah, and apparently in the 5 years through 2014, it was down 28% than it was in 95 to 99. And of the 3 types of flamingos that are in the area, the Andean is classified as vulnerable, while the Chilean and James are near threatened. And I mean, it's like here, if they even see a single migratory bird perched on your property for 2 minutes, they stop you from building on it. But here, nothing.
The best we can do is minimize the amount of pollution. We can't eliminate it entirely. But environmentalists don't seem to understand that, at least the environmentalists I see on TV. And as a direct result, many of the policies, however well-intentioned they are, end up backfiring quite dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, if you really care about endangered species, you can't just ignore problems when they become inconvenient for you.
Exactly.
So the next time you hear environmentalists go on and on about such and such being a threat to this species or that, remember what got them named this week's biggest Bogon emitter. If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. And now it's time to put a plagiarized speech on the teleprompter of this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire.
And this week it goes to the Cleveland Police Patrolmen's Association, who wanted the state of Ohio to just ignore the Second Amendment during the Republican National Convention. So this is Steve Loomis, president of the Policemen's Union in Cleveland. Quote, "We are sending a letter to Governor Kasich requesting assistance from him. He could very easily do some kind of executive order or something. I don't care if it's constitutional or not at this point. They can fight about it after the RNC, or they can lift it after the RNC, but I want him to absolutely outlaw open carry in Cuyahoga County until this RNC is over."
So, You know how most temporary policies tend to have a disturbing tendency to last an unusually long time?
Yeah. I think it was Milton Friedman that said that nothing is more permanent than a temporary government measure.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what would happen if somebody actually passed that through. So, especially as, last I heard, Ohio is not a famously democratic state.
So, Ohio has open carry, which means citizens can carry any legal firearm openly in public, except for this very small secure zone that they've set up. And Kasich responded to their request saying, quote, Ohio governors do not have the power to arbitrarily suspend federal and state constitutional rights or state laws as suggested. And of course, the police swear oaths to the Constitution, so I mean, that's got to count for something too.
Something tells me that as soon as they do the Constitution, they pretty much just forget that they ever did it.
I've noticed that with military people too, like with the flag burning stuff. They'll say, well, I swore an oath to protect that flag. Look at the military oath. No, you didn't. You swore an oath to the Constitution, not one word about the flag in there.
Exactly. How well has gun control actually helped? It certainly didn't help these 84 unfortunates in Nice. The guy didn't need a gun.
Yeah, we need sensible cargo truck control. An assault vehicle ban.
I mean, I really hate having to bring that up so soon after their deaths, but at the same time, this isn't going to work. If they want people dead, they're going to find a way.
Yeah, and especially if you've got someone who's willing to give his life to do harm to others, there's not a whole lot you can do to stop him.
And considering how controversial Trump is, if somebody wants him dead and seriously wants to do something about it, something tells me that he or she is not going to care about these bans on open carry or concealed carry or any sort of carrying a firearm. And frankly, I think it's better off if we just leave open carry, because if you have open carry, and that's one of the things I really like about states with open carry, for example, New Mexico and Ohio, people see your weapons. They know you're armed. So if somebody wants to do crime, they know that the people in front of them are armed. Some people argue that concealed carry is better on a tactical level. People don't know if you're equipped or not. But this is the era of me thinking, if you see the person equipped, that means you know he's dangerous.
I think you kind of need a little bit of both, because if you have the open carry, if everyone's concealed carry, then it can kind of get out of sight, out of mind, and you don't think about it. But if you have the open carry people to remind them, oh yeah, people come around here carrying guns, but you also have enough concealed carry people that you don't know for sure who's carrying a gun, I think that's probably the winning combination there. You know, just because you don't see someone carrying a gun doesn't mean they're vulnerable.
I see where you're coming at with that. Either way, the case has to be made that you're going to want to make sure that everybody has the ability to stop the problem before it gets way out of hand. But, of course, we're going to hear the same old rhetoric again about this. And, for example, that people who advocate open carry and other similar measures don't care about people's lives, or that we're going to be returning to the days of the Wild West and all that stuff.
So Loomis also said, quote, we are going to be looking very, very hard at anyone who has an open carry. It is irresponsible of those folks, especially right now, to be coming downtown with open carry ARs or anything else. I couldn't care less if it's legal or not. We are constitutional law enforcement. We love the Constitution, support it and defend it, but you can't go into a crowded theater and scream fire, and that's exactly what they're doing by bringing those guns down there.
3 problems come to mind. First off, it's common knowledge in Ohio that open carry is legal, so seeing a guy with a firearm isn't necessarily going to raise suspicion. The second problem is, if you really love the Constitution, you should be enforcing the Constitution. There are no qualifiers. And third, because that logic worked out so well at the OK Corral.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize the OK Corral was a result of gun control.
Exactly. I mean, what started the fight? Wyatt Earp and Morgan Earp and Doc Holliday go up to this random group of Missouri people and tell them, hand over your guns. You're not allowed to open carry. Essentially, you're not allowed to open carry it in the middle of high noon in Tombstone.
Well, it started a little earlier than that. Doc Holliday had, I think it was Ike Clanton. Doc Holliday had threatened to kill Ike Clanton, so Ike got a gun to protect himself, and then that was when he went to the Earps and they went there and all that started.
Pretty much.
But we've also covered before where that screaming fire in a crowded theater comes from, about how it was actually used to support stopping people from using their free speech to protest the draft in World War I.
Yep.
So, yeah, he doesn't like free speech or the right to keep and bear arms.
And of course, here's the difference. When you're shouting fire in a crowded theater, you are knowingly trying to cause harm. People will panic, they will definitely go up, and they will possibly trample each other to death over this.
Actually, I suspect what would happen is absolutely nothing. People might glare at you and tell you to shush because they're trying to watch the movie.
That's more likely, but let's play it at their game. On the other hand, though, a person carrying a weapon isn't necessarily going to incite the same amount of suspicion.
Yeah, but the thing is, when criminals are surveyed, and there have been a number of such surveys, they repeatedly say that they're far less likely to commit crimes when there are armed citizens around or when they think their intended victims might be armed. So, hey, morons! These open carry people are trying to make your job easier. Instead of harassing them, how about thanking them?
Well, there is that, but also, and I was going to get to that point, even if crowds may be unpredictable in their behavior, this isn't really an excuse to deprive people of their rights. You shouldn't be depriving someone's right of free speech just because some idiot shouted fire in a theater.
So all of that makes Stephen Loomis and the Cleveland Police Patrolmen's Association this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this Because You're Lonely edition of the Bogosity podcast. Come join the discussion at forum.bogosity.tv and feel free to join in by sending a question, statement, news article, or rant in text or audio to podcast@bogosity.tv. This podcast depends on you to keep going, so please donate using the links on the website or the QR codes in the thumbnail, or become a patron at patreon.bogosity.tv and get the podcast and YouTube videos early and without ads or promos. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Ibrahim Zallum for joining me.
Pleasure's mine.
Next Saturday is the 5th Saturday in the month, so no podcast next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Until then, here's a quote from H.L. Mencken. "The only good bureaucrat is one with a pistol at his head. Put it in his hand, and it's goodbye to the Bill of Rights." The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Bogosity. Want answers to creationist claims against evolution? Would you like to know more about evolution yourself, or even engage creationists more directly, with actual peer-reviewed sources to back you up? My book, How Evolution is Scientific, is designed to show the basics of evolutionary theory and how it is so well supported using the scientific method. It's impeccably sourced, with references to the actual scientific material, and is arranged using the creationists' own criteria of what is scientific. Using their own arguments against them, see how evolution is scientific, but creationism is not, based on observations, accurate predictions, logic, and evidence. Get answers to common creationist claims, and even a primer on abiogenesis, the start of all life. It's all in my book, How Evolution is Scientific, available at Amazon and on Kindle, EPUB, and PDF as well. Get How Evolution is Scientific and never be taken in by creationists again.
I have to say, H.L. Mencken, love the guy.
Don't you just feel the warm fuzzies every time you read something you wrote?
Oh, yeah. It appeals to my inner cynic. And unfortunately, some of the methods used for so-called
Hotels.com makes it simple to book the perfect kid-friendly hotel.
Hold on.
Finally!
Whatever, Captain.
Damn it, CNN! Stop auto-playing.
Hotels.com summer sale and get an extra 10% off with
At least give me a way to stop the... Oh, jeez. Sorry, I was loading up the next story, and CNN started auto-playing.
Clearly they protest our Bogosity podcast.